Hey guys, it's Alyssa, the hopeless romantic redhead.
And I'm Danielle, the whodunit detective.
And welcome to Main Character Syndrome. If you feel like you're the main character in your life, you are in the right place. Well, we are in our final episode for Tower of Dawn, Book 6 of the Throne of Glass series. It has been a wild ride. There have been some plot twists, and a lot of information has been revealed, including about Miss Maeve. But before we go any further, we are going to give a spoiler alert. Once again, if you have not read up to chapter 53 of Tower of Dawn and all of the other books previous, go read those books and come back to this podcast.
Well, really, to the end of Tower of Dawn, we're starting with chapter
Yeah.
53.
If you have not read through Tower of Dawn, so up to Kingdom of Ash, I would say.
Yeah. So we're gonna get into all of the big details, spoilers, and where we just ended was with, let's see, chapter 52, and um Kale and Irene had left to go back to Antica. They get back to realize that someone has, ransacked Kale's room. They've stolen the scrolls, and this is just not good. And so in chapter 53, Irene, I must mention that Kale has been like, Irene, you're not going to sleep here tonight. Um, you go back to the Torre, and he's kind of waiting for Nezrin to come back. So she's kind of upset. And in chapter 53, she visits Euphisa, and Euphisa knows about her romance with Kale. Irene tells her that she thinks the healers were put there specifically in Antica to fight against the Volg. And Irene asks her if she can read the scroll, which was not taken, which has word marks on it. And Euphisa says no. But then she drops a bomb, and that is that Euphisa has ancient texts that have been locked away, and that she was told by her predecessor that these books aren't meant for human eyes. And Irene asks if she can take them to her friend who can read them. And she says that she'll have to think about it because they are texts apparently worth killing for. And the Fae there, we learn, built temples to gods and put their bodies in tombs, sealed with spells to never be opened because they didn't want anyone to take their bodies. Now, the Fae stole their healing teachings from somewhere else. They're like, I mean, we're not the first to kind of know about this. Our teachings were taken from somewhere else. And Irene had left her scroll with Euphisa. And Irene then goes to the womb in La Torre, and she's there with the bells, and she decides to ring her bell, and she starts following the sound. And once again, there's kind of some magic there in the womb. And it ends at Jaffa Tower's bell, obviously one of her relatives. And that is a 200-year-old bell. And she continues to hear the voice say to her to enter where she fears to tread. And she realizes it's not about Chaol, but it's about herself. And she starts to accept that not all of the soldiers in Rifthold are bad. And so she's kind of going through this healing process as well, as healing Chaol.
Yeah. Honestly, something as traumatic as watching a bunch of Otterland soldiers set your mother on fire would also make me very wary of
Yeah,
future Otterland soldiers. So
probably so.
valid,
Yeah.
valid point for her. Chapter 54. So Kael kind of wakes up in unbearable pain and he can barely move as he reflects on recent events. Kael gets even worse as the day goes on, and when Irene arrives to treat him, she treats him and like tries to soothe him even though he's in agonizing pain and she's kind of pissed at him. Irene is kind of going through this new method to Kael's dismay, but she kind of convinces him to trust her. She uses her magic and dives into his body to engage in a battle with the darkness that has taken hold. She faces off with this cold, hollow shadow that embodies the Volk's corruption, and she's determined to end things once and for all.
Chapter 55, Kaol is going through his darkness, basically seeing his father, and he must face him, himself being an oath breaker, and he must face Aelin. And in this, he feels just a lot of hatred, and he hates Aelin, he hates Rowan, and he blames Aelin for ruining his life. And then all of a sudden, while he's going through all this darkness, a garden appears again with Irene and her mother, and he begins to look at Aelin and Rowan and their relationship differently. And then once again, he starts to feel guilty about Nezrin still, and then feels guilty about leaving Dorian to fight against his father and his royal guards dying because of him. And he becomes then all of a sudden hopeful that this isn't the end, that he's going to go back to protect his King Dorian. And then Irene says that he will always live with a little of this darkness inside of him, but it's himself who's been feeding this darkness. And it will hurt to come out of this darkness one last time. And she's saying this kind of in this healing state. So he's not quite conscious yet. And then while he's in this healing state, she tells him that she loves him. And then Kaol then faces the darkness himself with Irene.
Yep. So 56, Irene pulls Kale into the light where he finds that he no longer feels pain. He can now move everything. He is completely healed. And the two share a very passionate moment. Kale then goes to take a bath, and he basks in all the sensations of the warm water, kind of feeling reborn. And Irene joins him. Kale and Irene continue. He says he loves her. Irene says it back. And later they're talking about what happens next. And Kale invites Irene to join him when he leaves. Very sweet moment there.
Yeah, it was for sure. Then in chapter 57, we're jumping to a different scene. Falcon is alive. So one of the Rooks was carrying him, but he's still in that spider form. And the group arrives back at the aviary, and Borte, we learn, has disobeyed the Hearth Mother and going to save them. And she went and got Urine to rally together to go on this mission. And once again, they just have a funny relationship, Borte and Urine. They are betrothed. And she told his Hearth Mom that she would finally set a date if she allowed them to do this. Sartak is also injured as well, and he and Nezrin end up staying in bed for about another day to kind of recoup, and they're just like together now with this romance. And then when they come out later, all of the clans are there to meet, because obviously something big has happened with them kind of killing the spiders and there being this big darkness to fight. And then Nezrin tells everyone that they aren't just fighting an army, they're fighting an army of demons in the north. And she's told everyone now the full history, including all of the new information that she got about Maeve being the Volk Queen. Sartak gives the riders then a choice to either fly with them to fight or not. So he's not going to order everyone to go out and basically die killing these Volk. But he's like, we're doing this, whether my father likes it or not. Nezrin then told Falcon that she suspected that she knows who his niece is and that it's their friend Lysandra. And then Nezrin gets a note from Kaol that says to get back to Antica as soon as possible.
Yeah, things are happening. Chapter 58, Kale and Irene are having lunch together. Kale kind of talks about his past and the struggles that Aelin and Dorian faced, including the king being possessed by the Valk Prince. So I remember in the beginning, Kale kind of left a few details out. He's telling these to Nezran now. Irene kind of proposes her theory that Volg are like parasites. They take over their hosts, and Irene thinks that she can heal those infected by Volg just like Aelin freed Dorian and his father from the Volg. They discuss Athrel's ring, which is the ring that grants immunity from the Volg, if you guys remember from Queen of Shadows, and its connection to Silba, goddess of healing, instead of Mala, which was goddess of fire. They decide to talk to Hafiza, the head healer, about this, but then Hasar brings some unsettling news that Queen Maeve's armada has found Aelin.
So then in chapter 59, Hussar says Maeve and Aelin have gotten into a battle and tells them about many ships of Maeve's turning on her and fighting for Aelin. She says Maeve, not Aelin. She says neither Maeve or Aelin were spotted, I should say, during the battle. But after the battle that Aelin won, Aelin was seen and her ships now sail north for Terrasen. Wendlin and the Silent Assassins have joined Aelin's army, and Hussar says that Aelin had actually written a note to her to ask for help weeks ago that went unanswered. And that's kind of like middle fingers up. Like, that's when I was like, Hussar, you suck. Like, Aelin asked you for help. And in the note, basically, Aelin promised her a better world. And she's kind of like, from one princess to another, like, help a girl out. I promise you a better world. Not so
Yeah.
much.
This is where the tandem read would have been fun.
Yeah.
This, because if you remember, the ships that turn on Maeve's armada were the Whitethorn family
Hmm.
and the Fae. And this was where we know the reason Maeve and Aelin weren't spotted was because they were fighting at that island.
Yeah. And we know
So,
that Aelin was taken and
yeah,
that
and we
that is
know,
not Aelin. That was actually seen after the battle.
right. So, but we know that the reason they weren't seen in this battle was because they had their own little solo one-on-one battle of their own.
Yeah.
All right, chapter 60, back with Kale and Irene. They head back to the Torre with a purpose. Aelin is rallying an army and they hope to present a united front. So Kale is determined to make one last appeal to the Coggin for royal support. They go to look for Hafiza, but find her office is empty. Weird. They find her iron key hidden beneath Irene's door, which means something isn't right. Kale then notifies the guards to go look for Hafiza, and Irene kind of thinks, oh, there were some hidden tunnels beneath the library. So they find out the location of the tunnels from Nusha, which I believe is a head librarian, and they head into the dark unknown of these tunnels.
So then chapter 61, they know something's off, something's bad, and Hafiza is potentially about to die. And so they ran to the tunnel and they reach three doors. Two of them are sealed and one of them is wide open. And there are two sets of tracks leading down this wide open door. And Kale's like, this is obviously a trap. And they enter into a chamber that is filled with gold from an ancient empire, and there are sarcophagi there. So this is one of like the Fae burial tombs that they're now in. And the high healer is bound at the back of the room, and standing over her with a knife is Duva. I knew it.
You knew she
I
was sus.
I know. I was like, she's quiet. So this is obvious.
But the way that it happened is so interesting. So, Duva has been taken over by a Volg. Duke Parrington, which we know is Erewhon, sent a wedding ring with Wordstone as a wedding gift. So they disguised the black onyx ring inside of a wedding band, which genius on their part. And then when Duva put it on, she was instantly possessed by a Volg. So Tumalin, if you remember the princess that died in the beginning, and she was said to take her own life, Tumalin suspected something was wrong, and the Volg made Duva push her sister off the balcony. Oh my goodness. She has been orchestrating deadly moves from the shadows, and she's been manipulating events for her gain and revealing that she was the one after Irene, which, ugh, creepy.
Yeah.
Duva then reveals that Irene is Silba's heir. She possesses the power to rid people of the Volg, so she wants to bring Irene to Erewhon as kind of a little gift. Hafiza takes this bold risk and hurls herself at Duva, kind of knocking her over. Irene and Hafiza manage to get away, and Kale realizes that he can't kill Duva. especially with that baby inside her. Kale then tries to defend Irene and Hafiza as Duva erupts in dark power, slamming it into Kale. Irene is running and she's like leaving him behind. Duva is trying to find Kale after he kind of hides behind a statue. I mean, it's true chaos right now.
Yeah.
Kale then appears with an ancient mirror, which Duva throws a dark power blast at it, and it bounces back, slamming into her and slamming her into this stone sarcophagus so hard, and she hits the floor and she doesn't move. Kale is like, "Oh, crap. I think I killed her." Irene goes to check, and this is creepy. She like turns the princess over, and my brain that's watched so many like psychological thrillers, and I'm like, you don't go up to the body and touch it because they're
Yeah.
most definitely still alive.
Yeah.
So Duva is still alive, and she finds the princess is smiling at her. Very creepy.
Hmm.
Kale then throws himself between Irene and Duva and takes the blast fully without any way to defend himself.
And he takes it directly to his back.
Yeah, yeah, all that hard work.
Yeah. So in chapter 63, Kale is now paralyzed again, and he is dying. Like, this is not good. Duva then tells Irene to wear the ring to basically make this all stop. And Irene throws a sword at Duva and misses and runs away. Duva then catches her and pins her down, and she wants to make Irene watch as she kills Kale. Irene though breaks free and she goes to kill Duva, but Kale is yelling at her not to because he's like, "You don't kill people. You're a healer. Like you're going to regret this." And he's just dying. He's paralyzed on the ground, can't move, he's dying. Euphisa is behind her now all of a sudden, and she's there with Nezrin and Sartak. They finally arrived. And then Irene goes to Kale to try to heal him, but he's right there at death, and light is then kind of shoved back into him. Like Irene's trying to heal him, she shoves light into him, trying to save him. And a voice then speaks to Irene saying that the damage is too great to heal him and that there is a cost if she must heal him. And she doesn't even ask what the cost is. She's like, I'll pay it. I'll pay it. Save him. And the voice says that they chose well, which didn't quite make a lot of sense, but I was like, okay, she's the chosen one, like Harry Potter. And then all of a sudden, all of the healers at the Torre are there, and they're all kind of lined up now. And then they all link together to use all of their magic together to heal Kale. It was like just like this really powerful chapter and moment where she's like, I imagine this being a movie and she's like crying over his body and like trying to save him like a fairy tale. And then everyone's like, okay. And there's just a chain of all these humans.
This scene is super familiar too with Akatar and Feyre being broken under the mountain and Tamlin's trying to like save her. And then all of the High Lords put their power together to save Feyre. So it's
Yeah.
very similar to that scene.
Yeah, for sure.
So, chapter 64, Kael is sore, but he is alive. He finds Nezrin and Sartak with a host of healers surrounding them. And Duva is alive but unconscious, and the baby's alive too. Kael then learns about the price that Irene had to pay in order to save him, and he's not super happy about it. It is a life bond between them, which means Kael can only walk when Irene's magic is strong. But when she's weak, he will still need his wheelchair. It also means when one dies, so does the other. Which also you can parallel that to the bond with Fourth Wing and Xaden and Violet.
Hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, Kael's like, you shouldn't have paid this high price just to save my life.
Hmm.
And Kael and Irene kind of both acknowledge that they'll face whatever the future holds together. Kael then sees Nazrin and Sartak together, and he realizes that she is so happy. And they kind of share this like unspoken conversation where he apologizes with his eyes, and Nezrin kind of looks at him and she's like, I think I did just fine because she found Sartak. And Kale stands, shocking Nezrin, and like walks over to her and hugs her. And then Sartak takes Duva to the Kogan and his family, and he tells them of Erewhon and the demons and how Duva is possessed by Volg. Nobody believes him at first, and Hafiza explains that it's true, and then Argan kind of like accuses Kale, like, you came here and disrupted my family, you're telling these lies and taking advantage of our vulnerability. And then they end up finally understanding. The Coggins like begs Irene to save his daughter. So Irene steps up to heal Duva and rid her of the Volg demon inside.
So Irene's, begged to heal Duva by the Kogan, and she takes the ring off first. And Irene sent light into her body now to fight against the demon, and she sees the demon inside of her, and it's like, I'm not a Volg prince, you idiot. I'm a princess, and that my Volg princess sisters are going to find you. And then Irene blasts the demon to death. Duva's vomiting and the darkness comes out of her. And Irene checked, the baby's healthy, and the baby is human, not Volg. I was really questioning this. At
Hmm.
first, I was like, well, is it going to be like one of those crazy babies we learned about early in
Oh,
several
from the yellow
books?
legs.
Yeah. But no, it's human. Duva confirms everything that they've all said was true, and the family embraces her. Kaol is now sitting because Irene is drained, and then the Kagan tells Irene that she can ask for anything, and she says that she would like a favor, but we don't immediately learn what that is. Kaol feels okay now about his new situation, with him still needing a chair and Irene, like being tied to Irene now. And Sartak says that he knew they were in trouble because Kaja, the servant, who Irene kind of questioned, her the whole time. And remember, she always sent her away. Kyrie or Kaja is Sartak's employee, basically. That's Sartak's spy. And that Kaja saw Duva leave earlier. And so she kind of knew something was off with Duva. So Nesrin tells them that Maeve is a Volg queen and everything that they've learned. And Aelin reported an owl at Maeve's side when they first met. I should say this is just added information. Aelin had reported an owl at Maeve's side when they first met, and the owl is a fae form of a healer. So Maeve has kind of healers there at her own disposal. And Nesrin says half of the Rook riders were brought, and that's about 1,000. So 1,000 of the Rook riders were like, we're going to come. And then Hussar arrives and says that she will come with them with her ships because of what they did to save her sister, to thank Irene. So she's kind of redeeming herself now.
Yep. So happy ever after for everybody involved. Chapter 66, Nezrin receives a letter from her uncle from 2 weeks ago and is overwhelmed with emotion. We don't know what it is in that moment, but she hops on her new Rook, Salki, to see her family. So she did choose the Rook, and she is reunited with her father, her sister, and her sister's kids. It's such a sweet moment. And then Sartak kind of finds her a couple hours later, meeting her father. He then says he told his father, the Kagan, that he will take the Rukin army to fight in the war against Erewhon with or without the Kagan's permission, and that he will be with Nezrin despite her being common born. So he is choosing Nezrin as, the person to marry. And the Kagan, instead of being pissed at him and like writing him off, he names Sartak his heir. And then the two kiss and share the really sweet moment together.
And kind of the Kagan tested him before he was like, okay, cool. He was like, like you can't marry Nezrin. Like she is just a common girl. Like
Hmm.
she's no one. And he was like, Sartak was like, I don't care. I'm gonna fight this war and I love Nezrin and that's who I'm gonna marry. And I don't care if I'm the next Kagan. And then
Yep.
that's when he's like, okay, this is
Yep.
yours.
We
So that
love a man who knows what he wants.
yeah, that was really awesome. So, chapter 67, Irene is getting ready to set sail now to go meet up with Aelin and bring all of these armies with them. Caution then comes and says that he wishes that he had never ruined their friendship. Hello, Taylor Swift song. He wished that he never ruined their friendship by saying how he had felt about her, basically, and that he missed her and her friendship. And he feels free now, not fighting to be the next heir. And then Irene sails away, saying goodbye to the Torre and Antica.
Yep.
And then chapter 68.
Yep. It's nice to get a little closure there as well.
Yeah.
Because Caution's a really stand-up guy, I would say.
Yeah.
I hope he finds love.
Yeah.
Chapter 68. Kale is on a ship heading towards the northern border of Elway after being at sea for 2 weeks now. He has had seasickness, but thanks to Irene, his wife, who's a healer, he feels better. So the two actually got married like 2 days ago. They kind of figured they're going to be stuck with each other for the rest of their lives. They might as well make it official. And they start teasing each other about their new titles. And Kale reflects on the challenges he's faced since their wedding, especially when Irene is tired. But the two have kind of been working together and they seem to have grown even closer. Irene is admiring her locket and pulls out the paper from Aelin that we know it's Aelin and hands it to Kale, who reads it. And he is dumbstruck. He realizes this mysterious woman who has brought Irene into his path, has put her on the path of being a healer so he would find her, is Aelin Galathinius.
Yeah.
And he is so thankful to Aelin in this moment. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And he tells Irene it's Aelin. And then, happily ever after, they sail away with a fleet of 1,000 ships full of soldiers, 300 healers, and 1,000 Rukin behind them as they get ready to take on Morath.
Yeah. He's just like, what in the world? He was like, somehow it all comes back to Aelin, and that all thanks to Aelin, he's found like the love of his life. And
Yeah.
it was just like his like Aelin saved the woman he loves.
Hmm.
And so that was really awesome to read full circle.
I love how Sarah J. Maas just ties things into a nice little bow for everybody.
Yeah. And then the sad part comes in. We get to the end, which is just a section called Fireheart, which we know is Aelin.
Mhm.
And it's basically setting the scene for Kingdom of Ash. Aelin is in her tomb, encased in iron, with this kind of death mask on. And she's sleeping a lot and she doesn't know where she's at because she's traveling with Maeve in this tomb. And then all of a sudden, kind of this tomb is opened, and then Maeve appears looking at her, and Maeve's huntsmen pull her out. And then Maeve looks at her and says, "Let's begin."
Ugh. And now that we know that Maeve is a Vogue queen and she's capable of so many horrors,
Yeah,
it's
scary.
not good.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is the end of Tower of Dawn. Final thoughts, definitely do not skip this book.
I
It
loved
has
this
so
book.
many, so much information for Kingdom of Ash now that I fully read it and fully understand it.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe you skipped that at first. Like in your first read, like this was your first time reading this. Like,
This was my first time fully reading. I read like a recap of Tower of Dawn because I didn't want to read the
oh
book.
my gosh.
I had to know what happens in Kingdom of Ash. You read the end of Empire Storms.
Yeah, but like yeah, this one had so much good information. This was honestly probably one of my favorite books in the series.
For character growth, I would agree. Just
Hmm.
because Kale really started out like such a bitter person and he kind of grew. The only thing I didn't love was that they spent so much time on the healing process only for him to regress after his battle with Duva to end up back in the wheelchair.
Yeah. I that while that is so frustrating and it breaks my heart that they had made all that progress, I understand like why I think that needed to be in the books still because while I can not say that I'm a person who has dealt with any type of, um hardship like that in my life. I have two working legs, that I'm blessed to have. I I think it was really awesome for representation in the book,
Hmm.
to still have that to be like, this isn't reality,
Hmm.
while this is a fairy tale, fiction book. I'm like, this isn't reality,
Yeah.
people don't gain this ability back. That's okay. And Kale's
Yeah.
still gonna do big, great things. So that's kind of how I reasoned with it in my head. And I'm like, he still has so much going on for him and he's battle.
Hmm.
But yeah, it was definitely
100%.
unfortunate.
And it was just like, it would have been better, I think, for the storyline if he had just gone through the journey of accepting being in the chair and finding different ways to do what he used to be able to do
Hmm.
instead of being healed fully and then having to go back to that life. Like, that is so hard.
Yeah,
That sucks.
yeah, pretty
But,
much.
he still kind of gets the best of both worlds. He can still walk with a cane. So,
Hmm. Yeah, I'm
just needs
interested to see
Irene.
how his role shifts in battle and with his life tied to Irene.
Yeah.
She better Sarah J. Maas better not kill Irene.
Yeah. And let's see what she has and how she's involved in this final battle with Erewhon because she's
Hmm.
obviously pretty important.
Yes.
There, I am so excited for you guys to read Kingdom of Ash because there's so much to talk about. Obviously, it's like 1,000+ pages. She's a thick book.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a 5 episode or if not six.
Honestly, I think we might do smaller chapters in the episodes just so we can really get into some of the information because it's almost information overload if you
I've
kind
gotten
of.
into like I think I'm only in like the first 3 chapters right now, and I was like, oh, this is
Mhm.
dense.
It is dark. It is very dark for the first few chapters because,
Mhm.
again, Aelin is in Maeve's hands. Maeve
It's
is
interesting
evil.
to see how Sarah J. Maas writes, just like looking at the audiobook chapter by chapter, because, the first like 20 chapters in this book, maybe not 20 per se, but a lot of them, they were a lot longer. So, like, the audiobook was like 30 minutes a chapter, and then they got a lot shorter. And then the same thing happens for Kingdom of Ash. It's like the
Hmm.
first 20 to 30 chapters are like dense,
Hmm.
very long chapters, and then they start to get shorter and shorter.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially the first few chapters of Aelin's point of view. But yeah.
Mhm.
So Maeve is Evolved Queen. Aelin has been captured by Maeve. So that is what we get to see in Kingdom of Ash. And how on earth is she going to get out of that situation? We'll find out. But for now, to the readers who listen, we'll see you later.
Bye, everyone.